Welcome to the first video in my series D&D Flipside, where I take D&D classes and see what they'd look like if we interpreted them with Filipino culture. And for our inaugural episode, we're going to be taking a look at everybody's favorite rage-filled primitive warrior, the Barbarian. So the classic D&D Barbarian has a couple of key features and equipment that's normally associated with it. As far as the features go, primarily they have a rage feature as well as some sort of unarmored defense. For equipment, they normally have a primary weapon that's normally a great axe and a secondary weapon that's normally 2 hand axes. And as far as their pack goes, they normally have an explorer's pack that carries with it 4 javelins or some sort of throwing spear. So with those features and equipment in mind, what would a Filipino barbarian actually look like? And to answer that, we first need to look into history. So, a warrior culture in the Philippines that is truly known for their rage and unarmored defense is only really present in one location within the Philippine Islands, and that is the very south. And of course, I'm talking about the Moro people of Mindanao. So the Moros are comprised of 13 Muslim majority ethnic groups in the southern Philippines. That would be including Mindanao, Sulu, and Palawan. They're well known to be the fiercest warriors among any of the tribes in the Philippines, and were actually the only group that withstood the 300 years of Spanish invasion. Now the Moros are also well known to be one of the only groups that remained independent even up to this own time. That includes the Sultanate of Sulu, the Sultanate of Maguindanao, and the Confederation of Sultanates in Lanao. So moving forward, we're going to be using the term Moro to describe any of these groups. So, as far as rage goes and unarmored defense are concerned, Moro warriors fit the mold of the barbarian to a T. So during the Philippine-American War, yes, we were included in that, US troops were occupying the Philippines and they came into routine contact with Moro tribesmen. And during this time, they would starve themselves for around 2 to 3 days and then bind their arms with little cloth bracers. But Marshall, why would they ever do this? I'm glad you asked, viewer. They did this because they knew that the Americans used smaller caliber rounds and that they could take at least 10 or 12 rounds before they would ever be put down. And as a result of this, in the opening years of the conflict, the Moro tribesmen actually inflicted a lot of casualties on the American forces. They would bind themselves up, take around 10 rounds, and then continue rushing forward, pulling out their barongs and krisses and either hacking the Americans to death or pulling out their spears and literally skewering them 2 or 3 men at a time. So as a result of this, the Americans actually had to switch over to a higher caliber round, the 1911. It had enough stopping power and a higher clip capacity so that it could pretty much put away all the Moros. And that's really the only reason why the Moros were ever really stopped by the Americans. And to this day, they're still the only independent nation in the southern of the Philippines. So here comes the good stuff. So for equipment, we need to arm our Moro barbarian with his primary weapon. And it's not going to be a great axe or a martial weapon of its equivalent. It's going to be the perfect blend between a cleaver and a bolo, this. Now this is the panabas, and as you can see, it's a big old chonker of a sword. Its hand is long enough so it can be used in 2 hands, but well balanced enough where you can use it in one comfortably while you choke out a goblin with your other hand. So for a secondary weapon for our Moro barbarian, we need to find either 2 hand axes or 2 simple melee weapons of their equivalent. And when I picture our Moro barbarian, I don't think he'd be wielding hand axes. I think he'd be wielding barongs. And the barong specifically is perfect for what we're picturing here because they are made for mid to close range combat. And when they drop their panabas, they're going to need something that they can get up and tear you apart with. And that's especially where the barong shines. Plus, the barong is short enough, roughly between 12 to 18 inches in blade length, where you can have 2 of them on your person and run around the jungle without being unencumbered. Now for the final piece of equipment we're going to take a look at, we're going to go ahead and pivot to the Explorer's Pack and the 4 javelins. For the Explorer's Pack, I'm actually going to be covering that in an upcoming video, but suffice to say, it's going to look pretty badass, so you're going to want to watch that. But for now, we're going to take a look at these. These are historical equivalent Moro hunting spears. And I think our Moro Barbarian isn't going to want to go with the broad-shaped traditional war spears. They're going to want something that rips and tears. But anyways, yes, this example here also has another benefit which I think we need to focus on in another video to come up, which is that they are extremely compact, which is a very good benefit to have when you are adventuring in very dense, constricting jungle environments. That means they aren't going to be getting caught on vines, on leaves, on any sort of overgrowth or vegetation that is going to stop you from traversing the landscape. And I do have to mention this, traditionally they wouldn't carry 4 of them, but that's the fantasy part of the video. And now without further ado, that completes our build of the Moro Barbarian. And now with the help of a device which clearly isn't drawing AI, we have our Moro Barbarian. I'm gonna use AI here to draw it, but yeah. Yay, doesn't it look awesome? With a berserker rage that is off the charts and an unarmored defense that can literally withstand actual gunfire, our Moro-inspired Barbarian is exactly what you need to bring to your next D&D campaign in order to spice things up while still repping your proud Filipino culture. But hey, that's just my idea. What do you think a fantasy-inspired Filipino cultural barbarian would look like? Let me know in the comments below. But until next time, I'm Marshall, signing off.